That day, when the new transfer student arrived at school, I suddenly realized that my childhood friend was actually a Yandere-type villain. He would eventually be punished for imprisoning and abusing the protagonist, ending up with a tragic fate. I stared at the protagonist, deep in thought, when my childhood friend suddenly spoke coldly. "If you keep looking at him like that, I'll gouge his eyes out." I turned back and snapped, "Shut that ridiculous mouth of yours. What are you, a butcher or a gold miner? You sure know how to dig for trouble. If you have that much energy, go do some extra homework," I added. He was stunned for a moment. "Oh." After being scolded, Jacob sulked and turned back to his workbook. I glanced at the silly strand of hair sticking up on top of his head and couldn't help but feel doubtful. This guy? He'll become a major villain in the future? He would supposedly do all kinds of unspeakable things just to go against the protagonist. Imprisoning him, tormenting him, and in the end, end up in jail. As I was lost in thought, our homeroom teacher called out, during recess, "Can you take Lucas Anderson to the admin office to get his uniform and lunch card?" Lucas, the transfer student, was sitting quietly at the far end of the hallway. I was just about to nod when I caught a glimpse of Jacob's deadly glare. He was looking at Lucas like he wanted to stab him through the chest with his eyes. I froze. The words I meant to say quickly changed. "Sorry, ma'am. I need to see my math teacher during recess. Could you ask someone else?" Jacob's pretty almond-shaped eyes curved up slightly. He lowered his head, clearly satisfied, and his pen practically flew across the page in delight. I leaned closer and asked, "What were you just thinking about?" Without a second thought, he answered, wondering if I should break his legs. The moment he finished, he seemed to realize something and quickly looked up. "Anna." I smacked him lightly on the back of the head. "If you say one more twisted thing, I'll smash your mouth." He immediately pouted. "Then your hand will hurt. I might as well drink poison and end it." I was speechless. I couldn't even come up with a reply. Fine. Jacob turning into a villain, maybe it wasn't all that surprising. He's always had the makings of one. I met him for the first time when we were 8, at the apartment complex. That day, it was pouring rain. As I walked past the flower bed with my umbrella, I suddenly heard a cat crying miserably. I stepped closer and saw Jacob crouched under the downpour, holding his jacket tightly around a struggling cat. The cat wailed and squirmed, poking its head out, only to have Jacob shove it back inside again. Over and over. I got goosebumps just watching it. "What are you doing?" I asked. Young Jacob looked up, his face drenched, with a scratch bleeding across his cheek. "I'm keeping it out of the rain," he said with a frown. "But it really wants to stay in the rain. It won't stop fighting." I told him gently, "It's scared. And probably in pain." He looked genuinely confused. "But I'm holding it so tightly, it's still scared?" Right then, I realized Jacob didn't think like most people. For the past 10 years, I've been trying to teach him how to think like a normal person. But apparently, not much progress had been made. I recalled the glimpse of Jacob's future I once had. His eyebrows furrowed, his eyes ferocious, a cold smirk on his face as he raised a knife and crippled Lucas Anderson. There had been no backstory, no clear reason. Just a fragmented image with very little context. I had no idea what kind of grudge he held against Lucas. Usually in stories, the villain and the protagonist fight over the female lead. But in this case, there wasn't a female lead at all. I spent the whole class distracted, trying to make sense of it. During recess, I went to the math department, then wandered back toward class. Trouble was waiting. The moment I stepped inside, I saw the class troublemaker standing in front of Lucas's desk, stomping on a brand new white shirt. With a sneer, he said, "A $500 uniform? A poor kid like you doesn't deserve to wear something like this." Lincoln High was a prestigious private school. Every year, as senior year started, the school offered big scholarships to top-performing students from other schools. Lucas was a prime example, a brilliant student from a poor background. Oh no, the troublemaker said mockingly, I got your shirt dirty. He twisted his foot a few more times with malicious intent. Want me to give you $20 for laundry? That's probably all your mom's worth anyway. A few snickers echoed across the room. Lucas said nothing. His back remained straight, fists clenched tight, tight, then loose, then tight again. I sighed and stepped forward. Go get a new shirt from the admin office, I told him. I'll bring it to you. The troublemaker raised an eyebrow. Class president? What, you want me to give you $20 as a delivery fee? I smiled coldly. You're not even worth that much. He instinctively stepped forward, but then paused as his gaze caught something. He froze. It's just a shirt, anyway. Fine, take it, he muttered and left the classroom. I didn't look at how Lucas reacted. I just quietly returned to my seat. Jacob gave me a puzzled look. Why did you help him? I hate school bullies, I said. Taking this opportunity, I decided to gently lecture him a bit. Jacob, bullying the weak just because you're stronger is wrong. If someone ever hurts you, the only way you're allowed to respond is through legal means, got it? Things like locking people up or using a knife are completely off limits. They're crimes. I spoke as seriously as I could. Jacob gave a vague nod. As long as they don't mess with you, I don't care. Then he narrowed his eyes and added with a chilling tone. If anyone hurts you, I'll drag them straight to hell. I immediately clamped a hand over his mouth and smacked him on the head with my literature textbook. How do you even have space in your brain for so many twisted lines? Why don't you memorize the entire book while you're at it? At that moment, a thought flashed through my mind. What if Jacob treats Lucas Anderson that way in the future, because of me? That possibility hit me hard. From that day on, I started intentionally keeping my distance from Lucas. I wasn't sure how the story would unfold, but staying away from the male lead always seemed like the safest option. So, when I happened to run into Lucas in the hallway and he hesitated as if wanting to thank me, I only gave him a glance before coldly turning away. He probably noticed the change in my attitude, his eyes showed a hint of hurt. But thankfully, he didn't try to come closer. Just as I sighed in relief, Jacob appeared out of nowhere. You've been watching him a lot lately, he said, tone firm and clearly displeased. He's the new transfer student. As class president, of course I need to check on him a little. Jacob didn't buy it. That's not the real reason. You're hiding something from me. It's not hiding, I replied quickly, switching to a softer tone and applying some practiced emotional manipulation. I just didn't want you to be upset, so I said that. Even if it's a lie to make you feel better. Isn't that enough? His eyes lit up with joy. Annie's trying to comfort me, of course I'm happy. He was so thrilled he nearly lunged in for a hug right in the classroom. I instantly held out a hand to stop him. Jacob pouted but smoothly wrapped his arms around mine instead. Annie, why can't you just belong to me and only me? Don't push your luck, I muttered. He instantly quieted down and started rubbing his face against my arm to win me over. I sighed and patted his head. Just stay away from that new kid from now on, okay? You never know, enemies can be made during school years too. If we can avoid it, we should. Jacob hummed in vague agreement. I thought he had accepted it. But the very next day, I saw him cornering Lucas by the wall next to the school building near the sports field. Jacob leaned one arm on the wall, completely blocking Lucas's path with a dominant posture. Lucas frowned in confusion. Do you need something from me? Jacob didn't answer. He just stared intensely at Lucas's face, studying it inch by inch. Then he mumbled. This face really doesn't look like anything special. Lucas Anderson's face suddenly turned red. He shoved Jacob away forcefully, his fists clenched and eyes blazing with anger. If you want to fight, then just fight. No need to humiliate me. Jacob tilted his head, looking genuinely confused. Oh, that was humiliation? But you're too weak, if I hit you, that would be bullying. I guess, yeah, it's humiliation. I had just arrived and heard that last part. I nearly rushed over just to shut Jacob's mouth myself. Before Lucas could throw a punch, I quickly called out, "Jacob, come here." Like a puppy spotting its owner, Jacob immediately trotted over. "Annie." I reached out and pinched his lips into a duckbill shape, ignoring his wronged expression. Then I turned and apologized to Lucas. "I'm sorry. He's not all there sometimes. Please don't take it personally." The moment Lucas saw me, the fury in his eyes faded away. He glanced at Jacob, then back at me, and nodded silently. I exhaled in relief and quickly dragged Jacob away with me. What was the point of blocking him like that? "I told you, don't cause trouble for people without a reason." "You kept looking at him," Jacob replied with a serious face. I just wanted to see what was so special about his face. He seemed satisfied with himself and grinned. "Now I know. You were humiliating him." Great, I thought. This is the same guy who once made saving a cat from the rain look like animal abuse. He has his own brand of logic. As we walked, I muttered complaints at Jacob while casually glancing back over my shoulder. Lucas was still standing there. And I accidentally locked eyes with him. There was something strange in his gaze. That night, I had a nightmare. I saw Jacob shoving Lucas's head underwater. I saw Jacob crippling Lucas. I saw Jacob locking him up in a basement. No matter how hard I tried to stop it, the Jacob in my dream didn't even flinch. I was so furious, I screamed at him. "Really, Jacob? You've gone this far? You won't even listen to me anymore? What kind of grudge is worth getting your hands dirty? What are you, brain dead? Ever heard of a plan? You don't even know how to hire someone to do it for you?" I shouted my final warning. "If you touch him again, I'll walk away and never come back." At that moment, Dream Jacob suddenly looked up at me. His bloodshot eyes widened in disbelief, filled with so much despair he looked deranged. And right then, I felt like I'd pierced through the dream and seen his future self. My chest tightened, and I jolted awake. It was just barely morning. With dark circles under my eyes, I opened the door and came face to face with 18-year-old Jacob. Jacob was squatting right outside my front door. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red with grievance. "Annie, I had a dream. You were so mean to me. You stopped caring about me because of that transfer student. What kind of messed up spiritual bond is this?" To calm him down, I had to reassure him again and again. "Don't worry. I promise I won't ignore you because of him. Ever." "But," I added firmly, "you can't just pick a fight with him for no reason. If he doesn't bother you, you need to treat him properly." Jacob narrowed his eyes and weighed the situation, then said seriously, "Fine. But you're not allowed to look at him. You can't smile at him. You're not allowed to laugh when he's around." I ruffled his hair and spoke in a calm, icy tone. "Be good. No bargaining." I warned Jacob with my mouth, but in my heart, I completely agreed with him. I had to stay away from Lucas Anderson. I couldn't let him become a threat to Jacob. I silently made up my mind. But for some reason, it felt like there were invisible hands that kept pushing me toward Lucas. At first, it was just coincidence. I went to the teacher's office. Lucas was already there asking a question. I stepped out into the hallway to fill my water bottle. He was standing right behind me in line. I ran back to the classroom during PE to grab something, nearly ran chest first into him. The school wasn't that big, and we were in the same class, so I didn't think much of it at first. Until the weekend. I went to the mall to pick out a birthday gift for Jacob. I had just stepped into the elevator when someone entered right after me. It was Lucas, dressed in casual clothes. I couldn't hold back my suspicion any longer. "Are you following me?" His eyes widened in surprise, and his cheeks instantly flushed. "And no, I'm not," he stammered. Even his ears turned red. My mom works nearby. I was just bringing her lunch. Only then did I notice he was carrying a thermal food container. Now I felt embarrassed. I gave a small laugh. I was kidding. Don't take it seriously. Not wanting to prolong the conversation, I quickly turned away and walked off. But somehow, I ended up on the second floor, and ran into Lucas again. Down the hallway of the mall, a classmate of ours, a known troublemaker, was harassing a janitor. "What the hell, lady? You call this cleaning? You trying to get me killed slipping on this floor? Where's your manager? I'm reporting you." The cleaning lady, probably in her late 50s, looked worn and submissive. I'm sorry. I'll clean it again right away." Lucas looked like he wanted to step in, but the pleading look in her eyes stopped him. So instead, he clenched his jaw and quietly walked up, taking the mop and tools from her hands, trying to shield her by taking the blame himself. As expected, the bully turned his attention to him. "Oh, so now you're working here too? What, think I won't recognize you just 'cause you're not in a uniform?" He sneered maliciously. "Touching my people, huh? Think you're something now?" Half a year ago, Lucas's mom had tried to save a child from getting attacked by an unleashed dog. In the process, she injured the dog. Since then, the dog's owner, a school bully, had been targeting Lucas's family for revenge. "Don't get involved. Don't get involved. Don't get involved." I chanted it silently like a spell as I prepared to walk past and pretend I didn't see anything. Suddenly, bam! A loud crash rang out. The bully had just knocked over a trash can and looked like he was about to lay hands on Lucas. I couldn't help but think this guy's brain was as empty as a broken NPC. Grumbling internally, I sighed. In the end, I still stepped forward and stood in front of Lucas. "I'll say this once, don't let me catch you picking on them again." The bully's expression shifted a few times. Then he glanced behind me, sneered, and said, "Jacob's not here. You better watch yourself when you're alone." With that chilling warning, he turned and walked off. I stood frozen for a second, then turned to Lucas with a quick, "Take care," and began to walk away. But as I stepped aside, I tripped over the scattered trash and accidentally stepped into a puddle. "Watch out." Before I could react, I fell, straight into Lucas's arms. A bad feeling surged through me. I instinctively looked up, and saw Jacob standing at a distance, his face shrouded in shadow. My heart skipped a beat. It's over. He's going to snap. Whenever Jacob lost control, he always started with silence. Back in 7th grade, a few guys from outside school had tried to harass me. No matter how much they taunted him, Jacob just stood quietly in front of me, shielding me. But the moment one of them reached out and grabbed my arm, Jacob's eyes narrowed. That night, he walked me home and spent half an hour washing my wrist in total silence. I tried everything to comfort him, ended up dozing off from exhaustion. Around midnight, a call from the police station woke me. Jacob had beaten those guys so badly they were hospitalized. It nearly turned into an attempted manslaughter case. The police had called his legal guardian, who then immediately passed the phone to me. When I got there, the first thing I heard wasn't concern. It was blame. If he's this unstable, why not just put him in a mental hospital? Borderline personality disorder, serious dependency issues. And the person he was dependent on was me. But on most days, aside from saying the occasional crazy thing, Jacob was harmless. That night had been the first time I saw him completely unhinged. I heard he broke someone's arm, and all the guy had done was brush against my wrist, for less than a second. "Jacob, we're home now." He stayed cold and silent, refusing to say a word. I didn't hesitate, I pulled out the ultimate weapon. "Jacob, hug?" From childhood until now, whenever Jacob lost it, this was always my last resort. And not once had it ever failed. But this time, he didn't even bother to turn around. "Jacob." I stepped forward, reaching out to grab his hand. but before I could touch him, he suddenly spun around. In the next second, his hand was around my throat. My back hit the cabinet hard, but strangely, it didn't hurt at all. Jacob clenched his jaw tightly, lifting my chin and forcing me to look straight at him. It was a completely dominant posture, yet in those bloodshot eyes, there was clear panic. "Why did you let him touch you?" he growled through gritted teeth. But his grip was gentle, like he was afraid I'd break if he held any tighter. I didn't argue. Instead, I acted as if nothing had happened and pouted sweetly. "Jacob, it's cold. Hug me, please?" His eyelids trembled. His fingers brushed lightly over the exposed skin of my neck. "You smell like someone else," he muttered coldly. "Makes me want to peel your skin off." "Then you'll have to take my clothes off first," I teased softly, smiling. "And give me a bath too. Every inch of skin, scrubbed clean," I added. "Use your body wash. The one you always use." His hands trembled, and his eyes reddened further. The moment I asked him to cover me in his scent, he couldn't hold back anymore. He let go and buried his face into the crook of my neck. "Annie, you liar." I slowly wrapped my arms around him, gently patting his back. "I only lie to you," I whispered. "Never to anyone else." "Only to me," he repeated, as something cold and wet slid down my neck. "I don't need anyone else. You're enough for me." He was the one who got angry. He was also the one crying. I let out a silent sigh but kept my voice soft and obedient. You're right. Step 1 of calming a feral beast, gentle stroking." That night, I scrubbed myself until it felt like I had shed a whole layer of skin. The familiar scent of Jacob's body wash filled the air, and slowly, his mood began to settle. But he was still upset. "He touched you." "I need to break his arm." "You're more worried about his arm than about whether I got hurt?" I asked. Step 2 of taming the wild beast, rational arguments, or, more accurately, psychological manipulation. If he hadn't caught me, I would have fallen. "You'd rather let me hit the floor, get bruised and covered in garbage water?" He froze. "In your eyes, his arm matters more than me?" I added a dramatic sigh, pretending to hold back tears. "Of course not," he panicked. "He can't compare to you." Jacob's face turned pale, lashes instantly damp. "Annie, I didn't mean that." "I swear I didn't." "I knew it," I said gently. "You would have been devastated if I'd fallen. That's why I didn't push him away. It was all for you." My fake tears vanished instantly. I looked at Jacob with a warm, encouraging gaze. "See? Everything I do is because I care about you." Jacob froze, his expression dazed and uncertain. "Oh, really?" Low verbal skills clearly made him easy to deceive. I patted him firmly on the shoulder. "Really? You don't believe me?" I added. "I lied to you for half an hour straight and even gave you your stabilizers. You were asleep before you knew it." Only once Jacob was sound asleep did I finally have time to reflect on everything that had happened today. Something felt off. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I'd gone to the mall to buy Jacob a birthday gift, and I was deliberately avoiding Lucas Anderson. So why did I still run into him? That area didn't even have any stores suitable for birthday shopping. Then, piecing together the string of coincidences from the past few days, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. This was all scripted. I already knew this world was based on a novel. Lucas was the male lead. And the plot had been constantly pushing me toward him. Which meant I was likely the female lead. Jacob was the villain. Would I really abandon Jacob for Lucas someday? I wanted to say never, but then I remembered how I'd forgotten to buy Jacob's gift because of Lucas. Damn this stupid plot. I refused to go along with it. I clenched my fists. I'd fight the storyline itself if I had to. On Monday, Lucas showed up with a home-cooked meal from his mom, saying he wanted to thank me. I didn't give him a chance. I got straight to the point. I only helped you because I happened to be there. You don't need to read too much into it. Your attention just bothers me, I continued. Let's keep our distance. I don't want Jacob to misunderstand. Lucas froze, clearly catching the hidden meaning. He looked away, shoulders heavy with sadness. Okay, he whispered hoarsely. Sorry. I silently apologized in my heart, then turned and walked away without looking back. Jacob had been standing a few steps away and had heard the entire conversation. When I returned to him, he grabbed my hand and took off running with me. I hate him, Jacob muttered. Let's just stay away from him. After the mall incident, Jacob's mood finally stabilized. But his hatred for Lucas Anderson had sunk deep into his bones. Of course, I sided with Jacob. We avoided Lucas like he was poison. Whenever we crossed paths at school, I'd act like I didn't see him. Once, we saw him getting ambushed in an alley outside of school. I pulled Jacob away and reported it to campus security immediately. To be extra cautious, I even filed a complaint with the Department of Education about security issues. The next day, the school had patrol officers on site. For several days, Jacob and I were practically glued together. We did everything side by side. And Lucas? We didn't even glance at each other. But clearly, the plot was getting impatient. One weekend, I headed out again to buy Jacob's birthday gift. I stood at the entrance of the shopping plaza, debating whether to call Jacob to go with me, when two large men suddenly rushed up to me. Before I could react, a chemical-soaked cloth was shoved over my face. And just like that, I was kidnapped. In the prime of my youth. When I woke up, my head was spinning and everything in front of me was pitch black. A panicked voice rang in my ears. Annie, Annie. The moment I recognized the voice, my heart sank. Of course. It was Lucas Anderson again. That cursed male lead, he was like a walking bad omen. I groaned in frustration and wriggled slightly, realizing my hands were tied behind my back. You're awake. Lucas scrambled over beside me. Don't worry, I'll think of something. I frowned. How did you even know it was me? Your voice, he said. Wait, his eyes weren't covered? No blindfold? Why the double standards? We were both kidnapped. I was still fuming when we heard footsteps approaching. Slow, deliberate ones echoing across the warehouse. Then came Lucas's incredulous voice, full of disbelief. You? A mocking laugh echoed above us. Someone yanked the cloth off my face. The sudden light made me squint, and then I saw a familiar face. I was speechless. It's that thug NPC again? He was only a senior in high school. What kind of grudge made him go so far as to kidnap people? Clearly, it wasn't him who kidnapped me, it was the plot. Finally got you in my hands, the punk sneered. He kicked Lucas to the ground, then launched into a typical villain monologue. And you nosy little B*TCH. He swung a kick toward my shoulder. I instinctively twisted away, narrowly dodging it. He paused, surprised, then let out a chilling laugh. You dodged? Let's see how long you can keep that up. With that cryptic line, he turned and walked out of the warehouse. I followed his figure with my eyes, then glanced toward the wide-open door about 10 feet away. Outside were dense trees. Looked like we were in some mountain forest. Annie, are you okay? Lucas asked. I was busy analyzing all escape possibilities when I turned back to him. He was still lying on the floor, hands tied, unable to get up. Save your energy. Focus on how to get out of here, I said casually, though my brows furrowed. I had a bad feeling about this. This didn't feel like a heroine storyline. It felt more like I was the tragic white moonlight character, destined to die early. After thinking it through, I decided to give Lucas a few last instructions. If something happens to me today, when you get rescued, make sure to take Jacob to the Nomson Mental Health Center. The doctors there will know what to do. I'll be fine, Lucas cut me off, voice strained. I won't let anything happen to you. Yeah, like that's up to him. Clearly, the plot wanted something to happen to me. I said if, I clarified. Just remember, take him to Namsan. Oddly, I felt relieved that the thug had already taken my phone and watch, both with GPS. That meant Jacob wouldn't be able to track me right away. The plot probably wouldn't let him find me so easily anyway. I didn't even get a chance to buy Jacob's birthday gift. I sighed. Could you pick out a few things for me later? Just say they're from me, he'll be happy either way. I kept rambling on, giving more and more instructions. Everything was always about Jacob. If Jacob ever gives you a hard time in the future, just mention my name, I said. But as the words left my mouth, a chilling realization struck me. That's it. I died. And that's why Jacob lost his mind. Why he never stopped seeking revenge on Lucas Anderson. I'm sorry, Lucas whispered hoarsely, eyes reddening with guilt. I sighed. It's not your fault. There was no time for comforting words. I pushed myself to my feet and slowly edged toward the warehouse door. The place was tucked deep in a mountain forest, surrounded by thick trees. The thug had disappeared somewhere. If I could make it into the woods, I might actually have a chance. Just as I was thinking of how to escape, Lucas managed to drag himself upright. He peeked outside and quickly grasped the situation. Without hesitation, he said, I'll distract him. When he comes after me, you run. I'll try to hold him off. Before I could say a word, the thug suddenly stepped out from behind the warehouse. He was holding a long metal pole, its presence alone enough to send shivers down my spine. Run! Lucas yelled. He stumbled forward, charging the thug head-on despite his hands still tied. Losing his balance, he threw his full weight into the man, wrapping both legs tightly around him in a desperate tackle. I didn't have time to process the rest. Clenching my jaw, I turned and bolted into the woods. But I didn't get far. The ground beneath me suddenly gave way. I fell, hard. Before I could scream, I hit the ground, safely. Strangely, the ropes around my wrists had vanished. I blinked, disoriented. In front of me were familiar apartment buildings. This was my old neighborhood. The sky above was gray and overcast. Not far ahead, a little boy, Jacob, sat squatting by the flower bed, hugging a coat to his chest. Soon, a little girl approached with a bright yellow umbrella, 8-year-old Annie. She asked gently, "What are you doing?" The memory played out like a scene I'd seen 100 times. I stared blankly, a strange sense of déjà vu washing over me. This was the original story's timeline. And I, somehow, had returned 10 years into the past. 10 years ago, little Annie first met Jacob in this very apartment complex. She thought he was a weird kid. She brought him to shelter some kittens from the rain, then walked away, thinking she'd never deal with him again. But Jacob didn't let go. Somehow, he found out where she lived. Every day, he'd stand in front of her house, bringing the strangest things. Rusty nails, preserved insects, even a small animal skull. He said they were keepsakes from his late father. But his favorite thing of all was the swing in his house. Between ages 5 and 9, Annie finally agreed to visit Jacob's home. That day, she saw what he meant by swing. A massive metal clothing rod stretched across the balcony. And hanging right in the middle of it was a single, thin rope. Jacob told her, "When I was little, my dad used to push me on that swing. He'd use the rope to hang me by the neck, until it snapped." Little Annie was terrified. She ran away and avoided Jacob for an entire year. At age 10, Annie's father and stepmother, now with a newborn baby, were preparing to move up north. They left Annie behind, telling her, "You're old enough now. Just stay here at the house. The maid will take care of you." Annie stood at the entrance of the apartment complex, staring long in the direction where their car disappeared. She kept watching. And Jacob kept watching her. That night, under the dark sky, Jacob reached out a hand to her. "Come live with me." Annie took his hand. Two abandoned children. From that moment on, they leaned on each other, growing up wild and free in their own fragile world. They truly believed they'd stay together for the rest of their lives. Until senior year of high school, when a new transfer student arrived. The Annie of this world hadn't awakened yet. She hadn't seen the future, hadn't known what was to come. So every time Lucas Anderson got bullied, she stepped in to protect him. Even though she tried to stay away from Lucas for Jacob's sake. Some things were simply meant to happen. She couldn't look the other way when someone was being beaten for no reason. And slowly, she started to forget. She forgot Jacob's birthday gift. Forgot to notice his possessiveness. Forgot even the time he got sick. When Jacob locked her in a room, sobbing. "Why don't you want me anymore?" Little Annie froze and responded. How could I ever not want Jacob? But whenever she mentioned Lucas Anderson, it was like flipping a switch in Jacob's mind. She laughed and said, "I think I like Lucas." Jacob didn't know what liking meant. He grew up under his mother's cold indifference and inside his father's warped world. He'd never been taught right from wrong. How could he possibly understand what love was? All he knew was the instinct to lock her away. To eliminate Lucas. But even instinct couldn't push him to hurt her. Every time, he'd let her go. Every time, she'd run back to Lucas. Until the day Annie was kidnapped by someone else. And died shielding Lucas. Annie died. And Jacob snapped. He was committed to a psychiatric hospital, treated like an animal. For 3 years, they didn't even allow him to take his own life. When he finally learned to suppress his madness, he began planning his revenge on Lucas Anderson. He wanted to kill him. But he never followed through. Because Lucas was the one Annie liked. Jacob clung to that thought to keep himself alive. Until one day, just as he was about to act, he heard a voice. "If you hurt him, I'll never care about you again." Jacob cried. He dropped the knife. He surrendered. He was taken away, locked up in prison, forgotten outside the story. Tears welled in my eyes as I followed Jacob's footsteps. As if, in place of the Annie in that world, I had spent years walking alongside him. I kept walking. Until, unknowingly, I arrived at the prison. And there, I met Jacob again. He was 23 years old. In another world. He was dressed in a prison uniform. His hair was a mess, his face thin and pale as he leaned weakly against the wall. He looked terrible, like someone on the brink of death. "Jacob." I thought he'd mistake me for a hallucination. Or some lingering ghost of a memory he couldn't shake. But he looked up at me, froze for just a second, then his gaze softened, calm and quiet. I slowly walked over and knelt down in front of him. "Jacob. I'm sorry. Please, don't cry." He lifted his hand gently and brushed my cheek. "I'm glad, it was you who came to find me," he whispered. "Not Lucas Anderson." I grabbed his hand, urgently. "I don't like Lucas. I never did." "I know," he said with a faint smile. He looked at me, and there was something resolute in his eyes. "I made a deal with the storyline." I paused, stunned, as he began to explain. He gave up his obsession with revenge on Lucas. And in doing so, he discovered the existence of the story itself. He had made a deal to complete the narrative, to let the plot unfold, using the cost of his own life. In exchange, I'd get one small chance to live. My eyes burned, and my throat tightened. "Jacob, you idiot," I choked. "Without you, I wouldn't have survived either." He leaned forward, touching his forehead to mine. "Go back," he murmured. "Don't be afraid." I looked into his eyes, wanting to say something. But suddenly the world spun. The prison vanished. In the blink of an eye, I was back. Back in the forest, lying on the dirt path. My hands still tied behind my back. Dizzy, disoriented, I snapped back to reality. Footsteps, fast and heavy, rushed from behind me. I was still in danger. Still fighting for my life. I struggled to sit up, but the footsteps were already right behind me. Annie! Lightning cracked overhead. Then, he was there. Jacob came barreling out of the trees, throwing himself at me in a desperate hug. Annie! His hands immediately went to the rope around my wrists. They trembled as he untied the knot, fingers cold, eyes wet. I saw the tears clinging to his lashes, and gently comforted him. I'm okay now, Jacob. He cried harder. His rough fingers hovered over the red marks left by the rope on my wrists. Does it hurt? He asked, voice hoarse. I reached for his frozen hand and shook my head. Don't worry about me. Let's check on Lucas. He was over there too. Jacob's pupils contracted. He looked up, suddenly still. He's fine. He was running this way when I arrived, he said calmly. I let out a small breath of relief. But Jacob added softly. If you're still worried, go check. It's fine. I blinked, surprised by how composed he sounded. But his expression, tight with emotion, betrayed him. You'd let me go? I asked. He looked away. Do whatever you want. Just, don't disappear. I reached out and cupped his face. Smiling, I whispered. There's no one else I care about. Just you, Jacob. His body froze. Then a low, animalistic sound escaped his throat as he collapsed into my arms. I paused, then slowly embraced him back. Jacob didn't have any special powers. But he always loved me. In a world ruled by a strange and rigid destiny, love was the only core that remained true. And in the end, we would break free from the story's chains. And walk toward a future we chose. Main story completed. Extra chapter, Lucas Anderson's perspective. Lucas had existed ahead of Jacob and Annie in the timeline. He had been watching Annie too. He realized their first encounter wasn't on the day he transferred schools. It was half a year earlier. 6 months before that, Lucas's father had fallen seriously ill and was transferred to a city hospital for treatment. His mother stayed behind in the city to care for him and look for work. Lucas remained in the small town for school. One day, he received a frantic call, his mother crying, saying they had lost the surgery deposit. He rushed to the hospital. And that's when he saw her. Annie stood at the reception desk, holding a small plastic bag and telling the nurse. Someone dropped this. It looks like hospital payment money. Can you help verify who it belongs to so I can return it? Lucas followed her gaze. And saw his mom. Before he could react, Annie whispered something to the nurse and turned. Walking right toward him. They brushed shoulders. In that brief contact, his jaw tightened instinctively. When she walked away, Lucas finally exhaled. He helped his mother to the front desk. He recognized the bag, it was filled with loose bills and small change. But when his mom finished counting twice, she looked confused. There's $2 more. The receptionist smiled. Someone kind added a little extra. Please just keep it. That was the first time Lucas met Annie. 4 months afterward, he secretly replayed the moment in his mind. Fantasizing about meeting her again, properly. He imagined himself saying thank you, promising to return the money someday. But when they did finally meet again, he understood something deeply painful. They lived in 2 completely different worlds. Annie didn't need his gratitude. She simply told him, "Your attention is a nuisance. More importantly, I already have Jacob." Lucas watched, powerless, as another version of himself became the object of her warmth. He suffered quietly, waiting to see what kind of punishment that version of himself would endure. But the story didn't go the way he expected. In this world, Lucas was someone Annie noticed. She stepped in to protect him more than once. She smiled at him, once. And in that moment, Lucas was overwhelmed. Jealous of the version of himself who existed here. But when Annie died in his arms, Lucas finally understood the cost of that divergence. Annie never truly had control of her fate. Lucas couldn't breathe. For the first time, he fully grasped the pain that the other Lucas must have felt. And what about Annie? Even in this world, her eyes never left Jacob. She saw Jacob's devastation after losing her. But she never saw how Lucas had been hopelessly obsessed with her from the start. She saw Jacob spiral into madness. But not how Lucas silently accepted every punishment Jacob delivered. Lucas never fought back. And Annie never noticed any of that.